The challenge. The air in the Galactic Military Academy's combat arena was thick with tension, sweat, and the metallic scent of ozone from recently discharged plasma weapons. Cadet Jake Rivers stood in the center of the octagonal fighting pit, his breathing steady despite the chaos that had just unfolded around him. Bodies of various alien species lay scattered across the synthetic floor, some groaning, others completely unconscious. Well, Jake muttered, wiping blood from his split lip with the back of his hand. Looks like Tuesday just got interesting. Above him, in the elevated observation deck, hundreds of alien cadets from dozens of species pressed against the reinforced glass barriers. Their multitude of eyes, sensors, and optical organs were all focused on a lone human, standing victorious in the arena below. The whispers, clicks, growls, and harmonic vibrations of their various languages created a symphony of disbelief. Commander Vextar, a towering reptilian from the Koroth Empire, leaned forward in his seat. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the human with newfound interest. The reports about this species had been inadequate, clearly impossible, hissed Lieutenant Zarketh, her serpentine body coiling with agitation. No single being should be able to defeat 12 trained warriors from different combat disciplines. The human must have cheated somehow. Oh, come now, Jake called out, his voice carrying easily in the sudden silence that had fallen over the arena. Don't be such sore losers. I mean, I get it. You probably thought one little human cadet would be easy pickings. Surprise? The sarcasm in his voice cut through the air like a plasma blade. Several alien species recoiled at the audacity. In galactic society, respect for superior beings was paramount. Humans, being newcomers to the galactic community, were considered barely above primitive savages. Down in the arena's medical bay, the defeated aliens were being treated by hovering medical drones. A massive, four-armed Gornak warrior named Thelmar was the first to regain consciousness. His rocky hide was cracked in several places, and one of his arms hung at an unnatural angle. The human... Thelmar groaned, his voice like grinding stone. How did he move so fast? So unpredictably? Unpredictably is right, agreed Pipska, aquatic Merlani whose gills were still fluttering rapidly from stress. I've studied 17 different combat forms. His fighting style, it didn't follow any known pattern. It was like fighting chaos itself. Jake chuckled as he overheard their conversation through the arena's sound system. Chaos? That's just human ingenuity, my scaly friends. We don't like following rules, especially in a fight. Makes things boring. The massive doors at the far end of the arena suddenly began to grind open. The sound echoed to the chamber like thunder, and every being present fell silent. Even Jake turned to look, his casual demeanor shifting slightly as he sensed a change in atmosphere. Through the doorway strode a figure that commanded immediate respect and fear in equal measure. General Krex'tul Void-Render, Supreme Warlord of the Draconian battle fleet, stepped into the arena with the confidence of someone who had conquered entire star systems. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, his obsidian scales gleamed under the harsh arena lights. 2 massive wings were folded against his back, and his eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of countless battles won and enemies destroyed. So, Krex'tul's voice boomed across the arena, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. This is a human that thinks himself superior to the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Jake raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. Superior? Nah, just better at kicking but than these guys, apparently. Though to be fair, the bar wasn't set particularly high. A collective gasp arose from the observation deck. Several alien cadets actually fainted at the human's casual disrespect toward one of the most feared beings in known space. Krex'tul's eyes narrowed to burning slits. Amusing. I had heard that humans possess something called humor. I see now it's merely another word for stupidity. Ouch, Jake replied, placing a hand over his heart in mock pain. Right in the feelings. You know, for a galaxy-conquering warlord, your trash talk could use some work. I've heard better insults from first-year cadets. The Draconian general's massive claws extended with an audible scraping sound. Perhaps you would prefer to test your combat skills against a real opponent, rather than these children? Children? Jake looked around at the still-recovering aliens. some of whom were easily twice his size. These children include a Gornak heavy assault specialist, a Vex'lari shadow dancer, and what I'm pretty sure was a Kethmori pain priest. But sure, if you want to add your name to the list of beings who underestimated a human, I'm game. The arena fell so quiet that the hum of the life support system seemed deafening. Even the medical drones stopped their work to observe this unprecedented moment. Krex'tul descended the steps leading to the arena floor with deliberate slowness, each footstep echoing like a death knell. Very well, human, but when I am finished with you, there will be nothing left to identify. Your species will serve as an example to all others who dare show disrespect to their superiors. See, there's that word again, Jake said, beginning to stretch his arms and roll his shoulders. Superior. You galactic types really love that concept, don't you? Here's the thing, though. Big guy. On my planet, we have a saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Your primitive world sayings hold no power here, Krex'tul growled, his wings spreading to their full impressive span. Maybe not, Jake admitted with a grin that was all teeth and predatory confidence. But our fighting techniques? Well, you're about to get a very personal demonstration. Commander Vex'tar activated the arena's combat protocols from the observation deck. Energy barriers shimmered to life around the fighting pit, designed to contain even the most devastating attacks. Medical teams were placed on high alert, though everyone present doubted they would be needed for the Draconian. Combat parameters set. Vex'tar announced through the arena speakers. No weapons permitted. Victory by incapacitation, submission, or death. The last word hung in the air like a sword. Jake's expression grew serious for the first time since the confrontation began. He had faced many opponents today, but none with the raw power and battle experience of a Draconian general. Still, something deep in his human nature refused to back down. If anything, the danger only made him more focused. Any last words, human? Krex'tul asked, his voice carrying a rumble like distant thunder. Yeah, actually, Jake replied, dropping into a fighting stance that looked deceptively casual. You might want to call your insurance company, because you're about to get educated in why humans are the galaxy's newest nightmare. The Draconian's laughter was like the sound of a volcano erupting. Nightmare? Child, I've been the nightmare that haunts 1,000 worlds. I have broken armies and crushed rebellions. What could one small human possibly do to me? Well, Jake said, his eyes gleaming with dangerous anticipation. Guess we're about to find out. The combat klaxon sounded, its piercing wail signaling the beginning of what will become the most talked-about fight in galactic military history. Krex'tul moved first, his massive form launching forward with surprising speed. His claws swept through the air where Jake had been standing just a microsecond before. The human had rolled to the side, coming up in a crouch behind the general's left wing. Too slow, Scales, Jake taunted, delivering a quick jab to what he hoped was a pressure point. The Draconian spun with fluid grace, his tail whipping around in a devastating arc. Jake leaped over it, using the momentum to deliver a knee strike toward Krex'tul's midsection. The blow connected, but the general's armor-like hide absorbed most of the impact. Impressive reflexes, Krex'tul admitted, grabbing for the human with one massive claw. But reflexes alone will not save you. Jake twisted away from the grasping claws, his movements seeming almost dance-like in their fluidity. Who said anything about just reflexes? I've got a few other tricks up my sleeve. The two combatants circled each other warily. The Draconian was powerful and experienced, but Jake was proven to be far more elusive than expected. Every attack the general launched seemed to find nothing but air, while the human's counterattacks, though individually weak, were beginning to accumulate. Stand still and fight like a warrior. Krex'tul roared in frustration. Sorry, not really my style, Jake replied, breathing slightly harder now, but still grinning. We humans prefer the hit and don't get hit approach to combat. Works pretty well, actually. From the observation deck, the alien cadets watched in stunned silence. This was not how fights were supposed to go. In galactic combat doctrine, the stronger, larger opponent always prevailed. Size meant power, and power meant victory. Yet here was this small human, barely half the size of the mighty Draconian. treating one of the galaxy's most feared warriors like a training dummy. "This is impossible," whispered Cadet Morgeth, a young Karath whose scales were pale with shock. "No being should be able to move like that." "The human's fighting style," observed Cadet Lanera, her crystalline form pulsing with analytical light. "It defies all conventional combat theory. He's using the general's size and strength against him." Indeed, Jake was doing exactly that. Every time Krex'tul committed to a powerful attack, the human would redirect the force, using the Draconian's own momentum to create openings. It was like watching a master martial artist at work, if that master happened to be a wisecracking primate from a backwater world. The fight continued for several more minutes, with Jake managing to stay one step ahead of the increasingly frustrated general. But the human was tiring, and everyone could see it. His movements, while still precise, were beginning to slow. Sweat dripped from his brow, and his breathing was becoming labored. Krex'tul, sensing victory, pressed his advantage. "Growing tired, little human? Perhaps now you'd like to surrender and beg for mercy?" "Mercy?" Jake laughed, though it sounded a bit forced now. "From someone who thinks wingspan equals skill? I don't think so." But the Draconian was right. Jake could feel his energy flagging. The general's endurance was far greater than his own, and the accumulated damage from near misses was starting to take its toll. He needed to end this fight quickly, or he was going to lose. That's when Jake did something that no alien in the arena had ever seen before. Instead of continuing to avoid Krex'tul's attacks, he suddenly changed tactics entirely. The next time the general lunged forward with his claws extended, Jake didn't dodge. He smiled. The reckoning. The smile on Jake's face wasn't the cocky grin he'd been wearing throughout the fight. This was something else entirely. Something that made every instinct in Krex'tul's battle-hardened mind suddenly scream danger. Instead of dodging the general's massive claws, Jake stepped directly into the attack. His hands shot up, not to block, but to grab. His fingers found specific points on the Draconian's wrists, and he pressed down hard with his thumbs. Krex'tul's eyes widened in shock as his claws suddenly went numb. The neural pressure points that humans had discovered through centuries of martial arts study were apparently universal among carbon-based life forms. "What?" The general gasped, staring at his suddenly useless hands. "Oh, did I forget to mention?" Jake said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned a few things about anatomy." Before Krex'tul could react, Jake's knee drove upward into Draconian's solar plexus. The general doubled over, gasping for air, just as Jake's elbow came down hard on a nerve cluster at the base of his neck. The mighty Draconian general, terror of 1,000 worlds, crashed to his knees. The arena fell into absolute silence. Even the life support systems seemed to pause in shock. "Impossible!" someone whispered from the observation deck. Jake walked slowly around the kneeling general. His casual demeanor returned, but with an edge of something darker underneath. "You know what your problem is, Krex'tul? Same problem all you galactic types have. You think bigger automatically means better. You think power equals strength." The Draconian struggled to rise, but his nervous system was still recovering from precise strikes. You used trickery. Deception." "Nope," Jake replied cheerfully. "I used knowledge. See, humans don't have natural armor like you. We don't have claws or fangs or the ability to breathe fire. So we had to get creative. We studied our enemies. We learned their weaknesses. We adapted." Krex'tul finally managed to stand, his coordination slowly returning. But there was something different in his eyes now. For the first time in centuries, the great general looked uncertain. "This fight isn't over, human," he growled, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Oh, I know," Jake said, cracking his knuckles. "That was just me getting your attention. See, you wanted to make an example out of me? Show everyone what happens when someone disrespects their superiors." The human's expression hardened. "Well, congratulations. You're about to become an example yourself of what happens when someone underestimates humanity. What happened next will be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations." Jake moved like liquid lightning. Every technique he'd held back, every strategy he kept in reserve, came flooding out in a devastating display of human combat prowess. He struck nerve clusters that shouldn't have been vulnerable, exploited balance points that didn't exist in galactic combat manuals, and used leverage in ways that defy conventional physics. Krex'tul, for all his power and experience, found himself completely outmatched, not because the human was stronger or faster, but because Jake fought like no opponent the general had ever faced. There were no rules, no honor codes, no predictable patterns. Just pure, adaptive, ruthless efficiency. This is how humans really fight. Jake said between strikes, his voice eerily calm. Not for honor, not for glory, but to win, to survive, to protect what matters to us. The Draconian tried to use his wings to create distance, but Jake anticipated the move. He grabbed one wing membrane and used it to swing himself onto the general's back, wrapping his arm around Krex'tul's throat in a perfectly executed sleeper hold. "Sleep tight, General," Jake whispered. Krex'tul thrashed desperately, his massive strength causing the arena floor to crack and buckle. But the human held on with grim determination, applying just the right amount of pressure to the carotid artery. Slowly, inevitably, the great general's struggles grew weaker. His vision blurred, his legs buckled, and then, for the first time in over 2 centuries of conquest, General Krex'tul Void-Render collapsed unconscious. Jake stood over the fallen Draconian, breathing hard but victorious. He looked up at the stunned faces in the observation deck and spread his arms wide. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted alien life forms," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I present to you the future galactic warfare, human style." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then, slowly, one beam began to clap. Then another. Soon, the entire observation deck erupted in a mixture of applause, cheers, and various alien expressions of amazement. Commander Vextar descended to the arena floor, his reptilian features showing a mixture of respect and concern. "Cadet Rivers," he said formally, "that was the most extraordinary display of combat skill I have witnessed in 50 years of military service." "Just doing my job, sir," Jake replied, though his grin suggested he was quite pleased with himself. "Your job." Vextar's head tilted in confusion. "Your job was to participate in routine combat training." "Well, yeah," Jake shrugged. "But when someone threatens to make an example out of my entire species, it becomes personal, and humans don't handle personal threats very well." Medical drones swarmed over the unconscious Krex'tul, checking his vital signs and beginning treatment. The general would recover, though his pride might take considerably longer to heal. "What you did," Vextar continued, "using pressure points and nerve clusters that aren't in any of our combat databases. How did you know?" Jake's expression grew more serious. "Because we had to learn. Earth isn't exactly a peaceful place, Commander. We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. Against each other, against our environment, against everything that tried to kill us. We've studied anatomy, physics, psychology, and anything else that might give us an edge." "But why?" asked Lieutenant Zaraketh, who had joined them on the arena floor. "Why develop such brutal efficiency?" "Because we're not the biggest or the strongest or the most naturally gifted species in the galaxy," Jake explained. "We're just the most stubborn. When someone tells us we can't do something, or that we're inferior, or that we should know our place." He gestured toward the still unconscious Draconian. "Well, we tend to take that as a challenge." From the medical bay, groans and muttered conversations could be heard as the other defeated aliens regained consciousness. They were all talking about the human, their voices filled with a mixture of fear and newfound respect. "The little human moved like death incarnate," whispered Thalmar, the massive Gornak warrior. "I've never seen anything like it. He fought without honor," complained Kixtera, the Vexlari shadow dancer. "No rules, no form, just chaos." "That wasn't chaos," corrected Pipscar thoughtfully. "That was adaptation. Pure, lethal adaptation." Jake overheard their discussion and walked over to the medical bay. "Hey, no hard feelings, right? It was a good fight." The assembled aliens stared at it with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "You're not like the report said," Thalmar admitted grudgingly. The intelligence briefings described humans as primitive, emotional, barely sentient. Oh, we're definitely emotional, Jake laughed. And some might argue about the sentient part. But primitive? He shook his head. Nah, we're just selective about when we show our true capabilities. Why? Asked Pipscar. Why hide your combat potential? Jake's expression grew thoughtful. Because the moment everyone knows what humans can really do, the game changes. Right now, you all underestimate us. That's actually a pretty significant tactical advantage. The implications of his words sank in slowly. If this one human cadet could defeat a legendary Draconian general, what could a trained human military force accomplish? Commander Vextar seemed to be thinking along the same lines. Cadet Rivers, I believe we need to have a very serious discussion about human integration into galactic military structures. Probably, Jake agreed. But first, I could really use a shower and maybe some food. Kicking but works up an appetite. As if on cue, Jake's stomach growled loudly, causing several aliens to flinch at the unexpected sound. And that, Jake said with a grin, is another thing you should know about humans. We're always hungry. It's part of what makes us so dangerous. The next few hours brought a parade of high-ranking officials to the Academy. Word of the human cadets' victory had spread throughout the Galactic Military Network at light speed. Admirals, generals, and defense ministers from dozens of species arrived to witness firsthand the being who had defeated Krex'tul Void-Render. Jake found himself in the uncomfortable position of being both a celebrity and a potential threat. Everyone wanted to meet him, but few seemed entirely comfortable in his presence. So, Admiral Quindar of the Stellar Defense Force asked during one interview, "What are human military capabilities on a planetary scale?" "Oh, we're pretty good at the whole warfare thing," Jake replied casually. "I mean, we did fight 2 world wars, plus countless smaller conflicts, and we managed to avoid wiping ourselves out completely. That's got to count for something." The Admiral's translator struggled with several of the concepts Jake had mentioned. World wars? Your entire planet engaged in conflict. Twice, Jake confirmed. Plus we had this thing called the Cold War, where we basically spent 50 years figuring out increasingly creative ways to threaten each other with nuclear annihilation. Nuclear annihilation? The Admiral's voice rose several octaves. Yeah, but we got better. Mostly. I mean, we still have the weapons. We just try not to use them anymore. Usually. The interviews continue for hours, with Jake's casual revelations about human military history causing increasing levels of concern among the galactic leadership. By the time General Krex'tul finally regained consciousness, the entire power structure of the galactic military was reassessing humanity's place in the universe. The Draconian general awoke to find Jake sitting beside his medical bed, reading what appeared to be a tactical manual. "Human," Krex'tul said weakly, his voice hoarse in the fight. "Hey there, sleepyhead," Jake replied cheerfully. "How are you feeling?" I tried to be gentle with the sleeper hold, but I wasn't sure about Draconian physiology. Krex'tul struggled to sit up, his pride clearly wounded as much as his body. "You defeated me." "Yep," Jake agreed without a trace of gloating. "Though to be fair, you made it pretty easy by assuming I'd fight like everyone else you faced." "I underestimated you," the general admitted grudgingly. "You underestimated my entire species," Jake corrected. "And honestly, that's a mistake you really don't want to make twice." Krex'tul's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "Nope," Jake said, closing the manual and giving the general his full attention. "It's friendly advice. See, I'm just one guy, a cadet barely out of basic training by human standards. If I can take you down, imagine what a fully trained human special forces unit could accomplish." The implications hung in the air like a sword. "What do you want?" Krex'tul asked finally. "Personally, I want to finish my education, maybe serve with distinction, and eventually retire somewhere nice with good food and decent weather," Jake replied. "As for humanity as a whole, we want what everyone wants. Respect, fairness, and the opportunity to prove that being new to the galactic community doesn't make us lesser beings. And if you don't get those things..." Jake's smile was all teeth and promise. "Well, then you'll discover why humans are considered the most successful predator species on our planet. And trust me, General, you really don't want that lesson. Over the following weeks, everything changed. Human military doctrine was studied intensively by galactic strategists. New protocols were developed for dealing with human personnel. Training programs were revised to account for human unpredictability. Jake Rivers became the first human to graduate at the top of his class from the Galactic Military Academy. His final thesis, titled Adaptive Combat Techniques, Why Rigid Doctrine Leads to Defeat, became required reading for officers throughout the galaxy. General Krex'tul, meanwhile, became an unlikely advocate for human integration into galactic military structures. His defeat had taught him valuable lessons about assumption and arrogance, lessons he was determined to share with others. The humans, he would tell anyone who would listen, are not what they appear to be. They are dangerous precisely because they seem harmless. They are deadly because they refuse to accept limitations. As for Jake, he went on to serve with distinction in several conflicts, always fighting with the same combination of intelligence, adaptability, and cheerful sarcasm that had made him famous. He became a legend in his own right, the human who had changed the galaxy's perception of his entire species with a single fight. But perhaps most importantly, he had proven that in the vast universe of galactic politics and military might, sometimes the smallest beings could cast the longest shadows. And every time someone mentioned a day a human cadet defeated a Draconian general, Jake would just smile and say, "That's what happens when you bring claws to a brain fight." The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.